Hi boys and girls, welcome to our reading workshop for today. Today is our last day of this unit and I'm so excited to do a little mini celebration with you. So, what you're going to need for workshop today is any of the books that you've been using throughout this unit. It would be great to have various folk tales, fables, and fairy tales if you have access to them, and other fantasy books too. If you're using your tablet or computer with Epic and Kids, that works too. I want you to be thinking about some of the books that you've already read that you'd like to revisit again. So once you have those things in your hands or in your mind, we'll get started. Okay, so today we're going to be sorting our books into categories. So it's going to be a little bit different than our reading workshop normally looks. Instead of reading books and taking notes on them, you're going to think about books you've already read. You could preview them again and maybe reread some parts, but you're going to think about what categories they would go into and why. So first I want to review the differences between folk tales, fairy tales. First I want to review with you the differences between folk tales, fairy tales, fantasy, and fables. So I'm going to revisit a video that Miss Wan did with you where she reviewed what each of those different categories looks like and the different things that those types of books have. So let's check it out.
Looking at 4 traditional types of literature: fairy tales, folk tales, fables, and fantasy. Fairy tales, there's often magic, like princess and princesses, and good always wins over evil. Many Disney movies are based on fairy tales. We have The Little Mermaid, we have the Cinderella, and even The Frog Prince. Folk tales is a fictional story that has passed down from person to person for many years, from your parents, your grandparents, and their parents. It just keeps going over many, many years. Evil characters always lose, like in the story Jack and the Beanstalk. Fables are similar to folk and fairy tales, but they always include an important lesson, which is called a moral. Fables also have talking animals and written about one important event. For example, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, The Tortoise and the Hare, and another example, The Crow and the Pitcher. Fables usually start and end in a specific way with reoccurring phrases as once upon a time, or long, long time ago, or they will end like happily ever after, and so the story goes. Fairy tales, folk tales, and fables are imagined stories that are passed over time, from your parents to their grandparents to their parents, for decades, centuries. You are able to connect these stories in your daily life. Fantasy stories are about magical people or beings that exist in fantastic or strange worlds. Talking animals or magical powers fight between good and evil, right versus wrong. Imaginary creatures like in Harry Potter. Or Mercy Watson to the rescue. How about Star Wars? Or even My Father's Dragon. Today in Reading Workshop.
Thanks, Miss Wan. All right, now that we've reviewed what the different categories are, we're going to talk about our lesson for today. So what I would like you to do after you watch this video is either take out your books or use your tablet or your computer with Kids or Epic to do this task. So I'm going to go over what you're going to do if you have a book first, and then I'm going to go over what you would do if you're using Epic or Kids, okay? So I have a stack of books here that I've used throughout this unit. Got some folk tales, some fables, and some fairy tales. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be categorizing these different books. So some of them will give you really helpful hints just in the title of what they are, right? This book is called Aesop's Fables. And inside, there's many short stories that teach lessons. I'm going to show you an example of one of them. Nice quick one. This one is called The Crow and the Pitcher. A crow who was almost dying of thirst came upon a pitcher which had once been filled with water. But to his dismay, the crow found that the water was so low he couldn't reach it. He tried with all his might to knock the pitcher over, but it was too heavy. Then he saw a pile of pebbles nearby. He took one pebble in his beak and dropped it into the pitcher. The water rose a tiny bit. Then he took another pebble and dropped that in. The water rose a tiny bit more. One by one, he dropped in all the pebbles. When he had dropped in 100 pebbles, the water at last rose to the top. As the crow drank deeply of the cool water, he said to himself, "Where force fails, patience will often succeed." There's a little picture here. So this little crow put pebbles into this pitcher so that the water would start moving to the top, and he was patient. Since he couldn't knock it over with force, he used his patience to get the water. So this story is one of many fables inside of this book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Post-it note and I'm going to put it on here, and I'm going to write down what type of book it is and how I know. So this book is a fable, and a couple of examples of how I know it's a fable. There's talking animals, and it teaches a lesson. Each of these little stories have animals that talk, and they teach you lessons. Okay, let's look at another example. Everyone should recognize this book. We've used it quite a bit in this unit. This is Stragonona. This is another book that has a little clue about what type of a story it is right on the cover. So it says, "An old tale retold." What types of stories get retold from generation to generation? Folk tales, right? So I'm going to put a sticky on this one that says folk tales, and then I'm going to put a couple of reasons how I know. For this one, I just put folk tales and passed down for many years. It's an old story. This is an example of a folk tale. So I'm making a separate pile from the fables for my folk tales. Okay, I also have another book here. This is called The Legend of Food Mountain, and it's by the same author who wrote the book that I used yesterday, The Adventures of Connie and Diego. So this book also teaches lessons, and it has talking animals. What category might this go under? This, too, is a fable. So I'm going to put that with Aesop's Fables. And last but not least, I have a couple of different versions of Beauty and the Beast. We all know the story of Beauty and the Beast, and this would be an example of a fairy tale. Couple of reasons why I know it's a fairy tale is because there's magic, right? The beast turns back into a prince, and good wins over evil, right? At the end of the story, the good wins over the evil. So this would be a third stack for fairy tales. So I have a stack of fairy tales, a stack of fables, and a stack of folk tales. That's how you would do this task if you were working with books. If you're going to work on a tablet or a computer, you're going to do it a little bit differently. So what you would need is a piece of paper. I split this paper into 4. I just folded it. And I titled it Folk Tales, Fairy Tales, Fables, and Fantasy. So those are the different types of books that we've learned about in this unit. So instead of putting Post-it notes, I would write the titles right onto this paper. So okay, so I put the titles of different books on here. Okay, so I put the titles of different books on here. Underneath the title, just like you would if you were writing on a Post-it note, you're just going to put 1 or 2 reasons how you know. So if I was talking about Aesop's Fables, I might put that they have animals that talk. So here are some examples of what you might put underneath it. If you read Aesop's Fables, you might put that they have animals that talk and the stories are short. If you put Stragonona, you might say that it's an old story. So there's different reasons why we know that the books fall into the different categories. So I want you to spend about 15 minutes looking at books that you've already read and categorizing them as folktales, fairy tales, fables, or fantasy. You can do that on a piece of paper like this, or with post-it notes on your books and making stacks of books. It's completely up to you. For this assignment today, you do not have to add an attachment of your work. You can add an attachment if you're interested in showing your teacher what you did, but it's not required. So make sure that you're reviewing books for about 15 minutes and creating a list like this, or using post-it notes and making piles of your books. All right, boys and girls, have fun with this last reading workshop from this unit, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.